Welcome, guys. This masterclass, what we're really doing here is we're promoting some healthy parenting. We're really going to delve into parallel parenting on a little bit deeper level. Um, what I notice um, is there's not a really good understanding about what parallel parenting really is. And it is a child-centric view of how to go about keeping the kids out of the middle while being able to parent them in an appropriate manner and stepping back and getting the kids out of the dispute, handling the processes that you have the dominion over, and understanding that you're seeing the world through one lens and the other parent is seeing the world through a different lens, and that you can't effectively change that. And not only that, that nobody else can change it. So there's ways to navigate this. And, Michelle and I have talked about this a lot in our podcast. I talk about it all of the time in terms of how to communicate, when to communicate, when not to communicate. And one of the things that jumps in and really rattles my cage in this discussion that I see in platforms everywhere is people using terms like gray rocking and those types of things where we don't engage at all. And when you listen to my dissertations in this arena, if you will, I'm talking about disengaging all the time, but that doesn't mean that I'm just talking about not talking about anything. There's things that we have to talk about, but we have to be able to discern where that is and how to navigate it. And we've also got to be consistently aware of our own participation in the conflict and where we are triggering stuff in the other parent that we don't need to. That's part of the disengagement process. And that's a part of the parallel parenting process. So people are talking about this all over social media these days. There's no place that you can't go that isn't talking about narcissism, narcissistic abuse, and all of these other things, but they're not getting into the nuance of how to really deal with it. I've been doing this for 20 plus years. Michelle's been at this for over a decade. We bring in a conversation that is nuanced in this. So that's really where I want to go with this today and give you guys some thoughts about how to really look at this differently, to be able to come into this with a different lens and start to um, parallel parent in a way that makes sense.
And I think also, Brooke, and one of the things that I know we're going to get into is that the kids have their own lens as well. And parents often see the kids as an extension of them, and so their lens is the same as theirs.
So the first thing that I really want to talk about here in this process is, and I think what I want to do, and maybe my team's going to slap me for this, for saying this, but if they do, that's fine. I want to make this PowerPoint available to you guys, so you've got some reference points to it. And so unless they beat me up too hard, send me an email at the end of this and ask for us to respond to that, and we'll get you a copy of this if you want. So we're talking about control issues when we're talking about high conflict custody battles, right? And there are dynamics that started here before you guys ever separated. They're pre-separation dynamics. And we have to be conscious of what those are. The unspoken energy of control often exists within the family unit long before you guys have separated. There's subtle power struggles that set the stage for the future conflicts. And if you think about this for a minute, you can identify those. So this isn't something that just came out of the blue. And when you separate, when you go to your separate worlds, this triggers and exacerbates and brings to the surface those earlier dynamics. Because now I've been the person that's been raising the kids. I've been the person that's here, and this has been my role. And you've been over here doing this. And now you want to do this? That was an unspoken part of what your agreements were. And now you're asking the other person to just drop that. It's not going to happen. It's got to be something that you find your way towards and to work into. And then the post-separation escalation is what I'm talking about, where this stuff really starts to get out of hand. So we want to go back before we start the parallel parenting conversation and understand the lens that we're looking at it through and the lens that the other parent is looking at it through. You want to say something about that too, Michelle?
Yeah, I just, you were mentioning the different things that parents did when they were together as a couple. And I see this a lot in terms of, one parent is looking at it from the lens of, I took the kids to all of the school events. I took the kids to all of the appointments. I was the primary caregiver. And now there's, two separate households. And there's a lot of push and pull where one parent is trying to argue for, well, yes, but we have two homes now and we should, trying to force, we should both do all of these things that end up, having a whole household at a doctor appointment because your kid has a cold. And where there's conflict, that kid is going to feel unsettled at the doctor appointment or whatever it is. And knowing, I guess, from both parents' lens, when to step back and say, okay, we're going to let, things play out in a certain way because it's best for our kiddo. But then from the other parent's lens, also, I think stepping back a bit and saying, well, just because I did all these things doesn't mean that that's how it's going to continue.
And I want to just step in here real quick and just, I forgot to say something at the onset of this, is that if you've got questions as we're going on, put those questions into the chat as we're going. We've got a person on the other side of this that's going to pull those forward and feed those to us at the Q&A. So if you've got questions as we're going, please put those into the chat room for us, okay? So power differentials and loyalty binds. These are things that are existing in the environment of where you came from, what your roles were in the family before you separated. And even in these healthy environments, these power differentials, these existing power structures exist. And they can be based on financial control, they can be based on decision-making authority or emotional influence. And these power structures, as they sit, define how the kids kind of see their world as things start to move forward. So you've got to give everybody space, especially your kids, to adapt to these new pieces. You can't just step in and take control of something and say that the other parent doesn't have dominion over that anymore. The whole idea of the parallel parenting model is that they've got dominion over that in their house. And you've got dominion over it in your house, and there's separate rules. And research tells us that the kids are adaptable to this. Experience tells us that the kids are adaptable to this. They go to different people's houses that have different rules. They go to different classrooms that have different rules, and they understand what those rules are and they adapt to them. The thing that's going to happen in this parallel parenting piece, if the parents are fighting over the control of this, it's going to create a loyalty bind with the kids. They're going to be caught in this place of, well, daddy said this and mommy said that, and what is true and what is not. And the place here is when we're here, this is what we do. And we keep our nose out of the other parent's world. Now, we're going to talk about this a little bit more later, but there are times where we've got to be aware of things that are going on, but they're far less than you think. And the control over that is far less than you think that you can have, no matter what here. So we want to be able to discern and distill that conversation more. Our kids get caught between their parents, and the subtle and overt pressure on them to choose a side is problematic.
Right. And I think that generally kids often tend to be drawn to one parent over the other for, a variety of reasons. And when that happens, that can be a big trigger for the other parent to kind of feel like they've been attacked and to start engaging in a way that, that's where the conversation of alienation comes up. All these pieces where it could be that it's just a preference for one over the other that would have happened regardless. That was there before the separation and remains in place. It could also be, based on the age of the child and whether they're at an age where they're, aligning more with the same sex parent. That doesn't mean that the other parent is bad mouthing you or trying to alienate you from the kids.
And I would add to that, Michelle, even if that is taking place, how you handle that, how you engage with the child and don't engage in the argument with them or engage in the argument with the other parent, how you parent in that is going to change maybe that preference or make that bond with that child stronger. So that loyalty bind is less of an issue for you, that you can go, yeah, I understand why you want to hang out with dad more or you want to hang out with mom more because that's what you're comfortable with. The idea here is to make your world comfortable for them too. So they can soften into going, oh, this used to be how this works. This isn't how this works anymore. Oh, I can do this. And they get pulled out of the middle of that bind because you're not applying that pressure to them.
Right. Or to their other parent.
So I know better phenomenon. This is an interesting piece because parents get in competition here. And this isn't a competition. This is parenting. And we're not trying to do it better than the other parent, but we are trying to do it better than the other parent because we're trying to do it better than we've been doing it. We want to keep upgrading and upgrading and upgrading and upgrading, not as a competition, but as a competency. And to learning how to be a better authoritative parent, to engage on my side of the fence. And the interesting part of this is if you're a parent that's only got every other weekend or holidays or a less amount of time, that doesn't mean that you can't elevate your parenting. And it doesn't mean that you can't have boundaries. And it doesn't mean that you have to have this engagement with the child as a Disneyland parent. It means that, hey, we're coming together and we've got these rules and this is what we're going to do. And if you've been following me, you've been listening to the podcast with Michelle and I, you've heard us talk about how to have positive anticipation stuff as a parenting piece. And this is where the parental competition just starts to disappear because we're parenting. This competition puts the child in that middle bind. And my notion in all of this is that if something that you're doing is putting the child in the middle of this fight, if there's a competition that they're in the middle of, if you will, that you don't do it. You move on, you find a way to take them out of the middle of that. Because again, the parallel parenting model is a boundaried model. And I'm not going to step into their world and they're not going to step into mine. But this requires you really understanding that you are seeing the problem through your lens.
Right.
And there's another lens that's looking at this. And there's other lenses that are looking at this that you don't have control over, especially if you've entered into the court system. So we've got to broaden how we see everything that's going on, and again, move this back into our zone.
Yeah, also knowing that, as a parent in a high conflict co-parenting relationship, you're looking at it through one of many lenses, right? And so my lens as an activated parent is going to be colored differently than a lens that we help people see things through.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And when this escalates, when this conflict is escalating, oftentimes it's because we're challenging another parent's parenting abilities. I'm a better parent. I know better. I know what to do here. They shouldn't have so much time. I should be the primary parent. I think in a lot of ways, we're limiting and not trusting ourselves as a teacher and a leader for our children. As our children grow, they get to see different parts of the world. They understand parenting styles. They understand where they feel safe. They understand where they're nurtured, and they lean in that direction. And even if a child has a tendency, a preference to be with this other parent, we don't know why that preference is there. It might be to appease that parent. It might be to get the pressure off of them. So they are accommodating that parent to take care of themselves because nobody else can really make that happen. And when we push them to not do that, or when we say that isn't true or that's not going on, and that's a distortion, we're not understanding the child's point of view in this. There's a child in the middle of this that is seeing the world through a set of eyes that they are trying to cope. And if we take that away from them, we're taking a coping mechanism away from them with a parent that they are going to have time with. I want everybody to remember this, and I want you to file this in your memory, is that most every jurisdiction is making sure that both parents are in this child's life or in these children's life. And most jurisdictions are leaning these days toward that 50% number. And that child is going to have to cope at that other parent's house. And they may be saying things and acting in ways there that are not typical of what you see in your own home. And the other parent is saying, well, it doesn't happen here. Well, maybe it doesn't, because the child is adapting and they're coming into your home and they're being able to let loose and be more of themselves and not so constricted. And frankly, this can be something that actually is a resource for them as an adult. They have the ability to see and do things differently, and also to move into these relationships that are actually more healthy because you have given them that to them. Go ahead, Michelle.
I was just gonna say, I talk to my clients about this all the time, why it's for so many reasons, but the least of not is so important to set boundaries with your kids because you are their biggest and best teachers, right? You're teaching them how to navigate difficult relationships because if your co-parent is difficult, your kiddos are gonna have to navigate that relationship. Now, that doesn't mean you talk to them about, hey, you're gonna have to learn how to navigate your parent. But by setting boundaries, reasonable boundaries that are neutral, not having to do with your co-parent, they're learning these things. These are the skills that they're going to need to navigate the time in their parents' house if it's a high conflict personality.
And again, this ongoing tension has lasting effects on the children's well-being. And our goal here again is to come into this from a place of let's get them out of the middle of this. That's the whole point of the parallel parenting model. We're going to have to pick this pace up a little bit. So healthy attachments, it's normal and healthy for the child to have natural draws. We just talked about that. I mean, this is a natural piece, and we want to allow them to have that. We don't want to impart guilt or fear on them for doing that. We don't want to make them bad for that. We want to let them have that expression of that draw to the other parent. And what we're doing is we're creating a situation where they're drawing toward us, not again as a competition, but as a natural movement. Let them find their way. Don't force it. Parentification risk. This is the place where kids step in and they start taking care of the parents. Part of that is what I was just talking about before, about that preference piece or that appeasing piece. They're taking care of the parent to take care of themselves. I want you to understand that. It's not something that is healthy by any stretch of the imagination, but it is a coping mechanism for them. And the setup is I have to give to get. That's a narcissistic movement into the development. So, what we want to be able to do is not have the children take care of us. And this is a subtle piece because we have this little thing inside that we want to be the most important one. We have this little piece where we want to have the child as our own security piece. And sometimes that is not a conscious piece. So we've got to be aware of how we put the child in that place, because if they're taking care of the parents, they got nobody taking care of them. And if you're in this room, you might have been in this as a child, and you can really see how that functions and how that dysfunctions going forward. We want our kids to develop their relationships with their parents in an organic manner. We want the children to have a good relationship with the other parent, and that might not be possible, but we can't fix it. So what develops organically there with their own coping mechanisms is something that we can only counter with them not having to have those in our home, with where we're having this authoritative, really attached and well balanced relationship with our kids that is not asking them to be the parent in this. Quality time. This is where the organic relationship happens. We talked about it a minute ago. Positive anticipation events, going into that place of developing the quality time in short, mid, and long-term events. Making this the routine, making this the learning place for relationship for the child. So they understand, what are games about, right? Games are about negotiation. They're about how you figure out how to do and be in relationship in a fun and sometimes competitive manner. But it's how we grow our intellect. It's how we grow our relationship skills. And that's what parenting's all about. And so much of this conversation is, well, the other parent isn't healthy. The other parent doesn't do that. They are not a good parent. Yeah, so what's new? This isn't news to you guys. But
I know.
I want to add one more thing here, Michelle, and then jump in, please. But sometimes what we see is if we can stay in our own lane and this starts to grow the relationship with this child, they start to settle in, sometimes we see the other parent wake up and start to do things a little bit differently. And now the encouragement for that growth becomes something that is healthy for the child and not a source for conflict.
Right. Yeah, no, I just wanted to add, and I know this is one of the pieces that you and I talk about at length in class, is that I often hear clients say, when we talk about the genuine expectation of opportunity is, well, we don't tell our kids, where we're gonna go on vacation because we don't want the other parent to beat us to it and take them on the trip. And we're missing out when we do things like that. We're missing out on probably at least half of the importance of planning activities and trips, which is having these conversations with our kids, getting their input, making them feel a part of this family, right? That's what is going to strengthen your relationship with your kids. Have that quality time. So I just wanted to bring that point into the conversation because I know it's one that we both hear a lot.
So taking inventory of your parental relationship with the child, reflecting on your responsibilities and your relationship is what we're aiming at. Having a self-assessment and having realistic expectations that reduce the pressure on your child. So realistic expectations of where they're at developmentally, what they're able to handle, because this changes the dynamic as they grow older, and understanding that your behaviors and your motivations are crucial for improving the parenting dynamic. We are blind to so much stuff as parents in these conflicts of what we are doing to keep it going. And when we step back in this arena with the parallel parenting, with the nuance and the understanding of actually how to do this, then it can be a game changer. And I know, Michelle, we've talked about your situation as you were going through all of this stuff and how that really made a difference over time for you. So we know that this stuff works. We know it experientially, not just anecdotally. Identify
Right.
your own patterns. Go
And
ahead.
take, I was just gonna add to that, take a parenting class. You know, so many parents take parenting classes when they're either pregnant or babies, but take a parenting class that teaches you about child development because it's not linear, right? It changes at every stage.
Set realistic goals for improving your parenting approach. That's what, so having that parenting class, understanding how to parent, knowing child development, having these pieces are going to go a long way to help you in this process. And then a child-centric approach. Look at what your grievances are and step out of trying to change what the other parent's doing or how the other parent is attacking you in this. It doesn't matter how they're attacking you. What you're doing is what you're doing. And if you're doing it right, keep doing it right and don't worry. This notion of what somebody else says about me is none of my business should be that mantra that you have stuck on the mirror in the morning so you see it every single day. So when the attacks come through, you're not responsive to it. You're not activated by it. You're just moving through the process. Recognize the perceived issues with the other parent's engagement or parenting style, considering your own family history basis. We've got family history here, and that's where we see the lens. That's the lens that we're looking through in here. And some of the issues that you have with the other parent sometimes are projections, sometimes they're transferred from your own histories. You're not seeing what's there, and you have to take that into consideration. You've got to go, well, is this real? And being in therapy, working with somebody in these issues can be really helpful for you. Safety first. Prioritize the child's safety and well-being, addressing the genuine concerns through appropriate channels. Sometimes these conversations don't need to go through the other parent. That's part of the disengagement piece. If there's something that's the child needs, you take care of it. And you let the other parent know that you took care of it. And if they get pissed off because you took care of it, so what? The worst thing that's going to happen to you somewhere along the line is you get your hand slapped by a judge that says, well, communicate better. Okay. But the child has got their needs met. And this isn't about hiding stuff or being subversive about what you're doing. But there's a place where the child's needs need to be met. Take care of the child's needs. Don't get an argument over it. Create pathways, develop the opportunities for the other parent to improve their parenting skills, fostering a more collaborative co-parenting relationship. This is a difficult piece because it's the nuance of disengagement. So I don't have to take care of the other parent and teach them how to parent, but I can open avenues for them to find that out. I can give them information, but if it's coming from you, you might find that you get resistance to it. You've put it out there, you've had that avenue for it. You've given them the information that they need. Let them run with it. If they don't run with it, it's not your problem. They'll say that you were being restrictive and not transparent. Well, if you've given them the information to find the information, then it's their adult responsibility to do that. And that is not being collaborative. You know, you'll find oftentimes that somebody took care of this, somebody took care of that in the relationship. Well, that's not taken care, that's not happening anymore. And we each got responsibilities as an adult to take care of our kids. So let's do that.
Right. And when a parent says, well, that's not, it's not my responsibility, they can figure that out on their own. Yes. And if it helps your child for them to have that information, then there's no problem.
Our children are developing from our nervous systems. Our settling is where their development happens for a settled, developed nervous system. So we have to be that. We have to not be anxious. We have to be present for the kids. We have to be their emotional support. And knowing that, you have the responsibility to help them know what it is to be settled. And that means you have to learn how to be settled. You have to know how to disengage from this. You have to know how to step back and have a meditation practice or a reflective practice that helps you settle. You know, my nervous system is no different than any of yours, and I get triggered. But when I get triggered in a relationship, before I snap out, I've assessed where I'm at in that moment, and I am down regulating that. And as a result of that, I don't get into much trouble. I get into some. I'm not 100% in this, but I do a pretty damn good job. But it comes out of practice in this. And you can't take a pill to fix it. Might help a little bit, but you can't be dependent on that. You've got to create these skills. So when your kids walk into a room and they're upset, you're not going, oh, don't be upset. You're settling into their, oh, I have a safe place to be upset. And that lets them feel secure and heard. Reducing the conflict. You've got to make this conscious effort to reduce that conflict and not let it into your home. So your kids aren't experiencing this craziness that's happening with you. You're going to court. You are working with a parenting coordinator, and your children are in the middle of that, whether you like it or not, whether you take them out of that or not, they're in the middle of this. They're feeling the distress there. So pick your battles in this. Pick what you think is really important and move toward that. And the rest of the time, you're parenting. You're out of the conflict. The kids are in your world and they're
We need to go to the
settled.
bathrooms.
Open communications, allowing your kids to process their emotions in a safe place. And that safe place isn't always with you. That safe place can be with a therapist. That safe place is something that you create for them where they can go. And even if you can't get the other parent to agree to a therapist, there's workarounds. And that's the nuance that I work with my clients with to try to find how to work those pieces out as well.
And if there is a therapist, those conversations should be kept with the therapist. Otherwise, you become their armchair therapist, and that's.
Yeah. I mean, we want our kids to have an expansive view of the world. We don't want them to have a restrictive view. And like it or not, the other parent has something that this child gets that's a part of them, that they, whether it's comfortable or not for them, need to be able to experience. And part of, I think, us helping our children develop is allowing them to be uncomfortable. And teaching them how to tolerate that discomfort in a container that helps them move. So the impact of the conflict on the child's development, emotional health, short-term effects, anxiety, stress, mood swings, long-term consequences, difficulty regulating emotions, and trust issues. Social skills, withdrawal or aggression, long-term consequences, challenges in forming healthy relationships. Academic performance, concentration issues, low grades, reduced educational attainment. Physical health, sleep disturbance, appetite changes, chronic stress related health problems. So this is all anxiety related, guys. This is where your children are experiencing anxiety and dysregulation. So we want to be able to open that door for them, and so they can experience what a regulated nervous system looks like. And then we can help guide them out of that anxiety into something more settled. And conflict does not help that. This is a wonderful piece that I wish people would really understand. When you are in this conflict, your energy is in the conflict and your energy is feeding the conflict. It's draining resources. It's draining emotional resources. It's draining physical resources, and it's draining financial resources. There is a net loss on every single level. It's costly. And it has little or no value. And I'm not saying there's not a place that we got to engage, but we got to be careful of where we're doing it.
And we don't need the other parent's participation in order to reduce the conflict.
Mhm.
Right? So we can't change the other parent, but we can absolutely change how we respond to it, how we show up for our kids, how we regulate our own nervous system so that our kids feel regulated in their nervous systems when they're with us. Those are the things that we can control.
And I'm not promoting that you be compliant or complicit with them. I'm just saying you've got to be discerning with this. And it's not easy. I mean, you can't just listen to me doing this or Michelle doing these master classes or taking a video or doing this. This is nuanced stuff that you've got to engage in a more active manner. The fact that you're here says that you want to do this better. Well, the resources are here to do it and to figure this out on a deeper level. So this is about seeking the professional guidance, understand what this is and get somebody to help you pull this apart. You can't go this alone. I've been through this myself. I didn't go through this alone. Michelle hasn't gone through this alone. My team hasn't gone through this alone. We understand this experientially because we've all lived it. And this doesn't happen on a PDF. This doesn't happen on a video course. This doesn't happen strolling through Instagram. It requires help. And you've got to be able to find that out, because this is how you avoid putting the kids in the middle. This is how you tune this in. And this is how you start to really prioritize and really understand what prioritizing the child's well-being really means. That's the issue. That's the top piece. And that's your job. So sometimes, as we started to talk about, we've got to put restrictions in place. But the restrictions that we're putting in place have got to be precise. They're precision. We're surgically going in and we're creating boundaries that can be managed, but also achieved so they can get to be a better parent. So when there's restricted contact, establishing those boundaries, protocols, supervised visitation needs, these are all things that are not just blanket, they're nuanced. And we can pull these off of the shelf and we can say, this is what we want. But we've got to be detailed in what it is that we are asking for when we go there. And we've got to be able to know that those restrictions, in most cases, aren't there forever.
Right.
You may be on one side or the other of this conversation, and you don't want them there forever if they don't have to be there forever. And the court isn't going to put them there forever unless there's something draconian going on. Everybody's going to get a second bite at the apple, sometimes a third, sometimes a fourth. So we want to be able to understand that, again, this long-term piece is our job, and to put these pieces in place strategically. Okay, here we go. So, question and answer time. We've covered a ton of ground here. We got some questions to come in and answer.
Yeah, Brooke and Michelle, there have been several questions around how to move forward when if it's in a therapy situation or it's a medical situation when both parents' signatures are required.
Wow. So therapy is really one of the biggest problems here, right? Medical less so, but sometimes the medical piece is there. I'm going to be really careful how I answer this one. Sometimes I can't make that change. Sometimes I can't get that complicity without going through the court process, without getting attorneys involved and trying to get somebody to make a judgment. But there are resources out there with mentorships, with
Coaches.
coaches, if you will, that can give the children a place to express and to talk. And, I have professionals in my area that have multiple skill sets, and they're not therapists. Some of them are body-based practitioners. Some of them have tutorial skills that we can put our kids in, that they can get some reflection from in another healthy environment from another healthy adult. So that is a really delicate piece, but working with your coach to help you find some of those resources, or to try to figure out how to do this so your children get that that help that they need, is again one of these nuanced conversations.
And I think also, the more you teach your kid, just again, generally, not with their co-parent, to advocate for themselves, they're going to reach an age where they start saying, I want a therapist. And there's going to be pushback if you've got, a 15-year-old kid asking for therapist and one of the parents is saying, no, you can't do that. So, the parent who's fighting against it loses a lot of their control with older kids.
That child has the right to ask for a therapist. That child has a right to go and get a
Right.
therapist at a certain point. And if they want it, that parent that's trying to block it can't block it. So again, understanding the nuance there is an important conversation. What else we got, Kelly?
What would be a good way to encourage open communication with the child when you are required to limit communication with their other parent?
So what I think I'm hearing here is the open communication with the child is between you and the child. And I don't have to have open communication with the other parent, other than what is important for the child's health, education, and welfare. And my parenting style, your parenting style, is one of open communication with your child. So that child can bring you anything that they need to bring you, and you have the ability to process that with them. And again, when it gets into things like the other parent said that you did X, Y, and Z, and you're da 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 da, and you can go back to the child and say, "Huh, that's interesting. What's your experience?" Rather than going, "That's a lie. That isn't true. That isn't that." It's like teaching the child to have some cognitive process in this, to have some sense making in this. And this is hard to do with a 3, 4, 5, 6-year-old child. But past that, the child has an experience. And what they're looking to do is to see what's going on here. And when you can approach it from that place, they start to learn how to have their own sense of discernment of a situation. And it's imperative in that process that you're keeping your own street clean.
Right. And I think a lot of times parents want to sort of sprinkle in some little pebbles that will lead them down the path they want. And that will actually put distance there. So if you keep it very, I think you said squeaky clean, they're going to start to put these pieces together for themselves, but they have to be the ones to place these pebbles in place, right? They have to be the ones to make their own path. You're just giving tools.
Yeah, and I want to add here something for you guys as you're listening to this, because I've said this, I say this all the time. Your kids are not going to come through this unscathed. The fact of the matter is they're not coming through life unscathed. They're going to be conditioned by this, and they're going to be conditioned by life. But you giving them the skill sets to navigate this stuff in a healthy manner is the place that is going to be the game changer for them. So I look at it through this lens. I know what my history is. And I know that I'm here having this conversation with you today because of my history. Is my history a bad thing? Is the conditioning that brought me to this, which is what I came here to do, I feel like? No, that was the crucible by which I got here. And this is going to be the path for you. This is going to be the path for your children. It's the path for everybody on earth if they're paying attention to what's important. Okay. Another question, Kelly, if you can.
From Jerry, how would you handle the other parent showing up at your house to cause conflict? Is there something short of an order of protection or some alternative way to push the pause button on that?
Yep. Don't answer the door.
And put cameras up.
And put cameras up. I mean, that seems kind of trite in the answer, but they don't have business being at your house. Don't answer the door. If they beat on the door, if they knock the door down, you got a phone. Call law enforcement. They've got no business there. That's part of the boundary system, Gary. Kind of simple, right?
And then watch your reaction to it.
Yeah. I mean, you know, this is a disengagement. I'm stepping back. Go away. And you're also teaching your kids how to just have boundary. Yeah, they're going to get upset. Yeah, why aren't you answering the door? Does that sound like something you want to get involved in? Nope. Okay, then let's just leave it. And if there's a transfer going on or there's something taking place that you know is going to happen, make yourself scarce. Don't be there. There's ways to navigate this, and it's not that complicated. All right, let's do 2 or 3 more. Kelly.
Okay, there were a couple of questions about the slide of creating pathways, like encouraging, I think in that slide you were saying encouraging the other parent to maybe also improve their parenting, but you talked about not being subversive when you do that. Can you give some examples of how you might create pathways to improve parenting on both sides?
Okay, I'll take a swing at this, and then Michelle, I want you to as well. What we're trying to do is sometimes we're trying to get orders in, right? And we're trying to get parenting plans in place. And we're trying to work with a PC, or try working with a mediator, or working with the court system to have things in place to help parents be better parents. And we can get things into those MSAs. We can get things into the court orders that say each parent will take a parenting class that has got a specification to it. My specifications are usually ones of redirecting children's behavior, Catherine Cole's product, Susie Walton's Joy of Parenting, Love and Logic. I think the new one is 1, 2, 3 Magic. I'm not, no, that's a little too but those three are really good pieces. So to get those written into orders and to have that be a pathway. Sometimes a parent will say, they'll notice that something good is happening in your world. Yeah, I took this and it helped me. You can throw stuff out there. If they pick it up, they pick it up. If they don't pick it up, they don't pick it up. Even if it's in an order or an agreement, they may or may not do it. Having them take a high conflict co-parenting class that is live and that has some instructor giving that to them can be a really helpful piece. Getting those in the orders, I think, is the best pathway. Dropping some of those stuffs in to see if they're going to pick it up is another pathway. Michelle, you got some thoughts?
Not really substantive differences, but sharing the information and then being okay if they don't take advantage of it.
Right, right.
Hey, I found this class, I took this class and I found it to be helpful in, and then maybe give a couple of examples. Examples that show that, you know, it's not me against you. And so that it doesn't come off as, well, I'm the better parent because I've done X, Y, and Z.
Yep.
They might not do any of it, right? And that's okay. But it's getting away from the position of, well, why would I share that with them? They're going to ruin their relationship with our kids, and I'm not, you know, that's not my responsibility. Well, you know, you're doing what's best for your kids. You can leave.
Hey, anybody? Anything else here, Kelly?
Yes. And I apologize if I massacre this name. I think it's Jose. But co-parent is not communicating with me what school our son will be attending this upcoming school year, which is first grade. There's joint custody and school starts in less than a month. What's the best way to move forward with this situation?
So I like this one. So you know the school district that they're in. You go to the school district office, you find out where he's registered, and you get the information from there. Most of this information you can get if you expand your thought process just a little bit. And in any instance, whether it's school, a doctor, you have access to all of the information. You just have to reach out individually. And I really prescribe to the notion of you're responsible for getting the information on your own. And if you're looking for the other parent to give it to you, that's a control game that you can take away from them like that.
Right.
In most cases.
Right. Meaning if they're trying to hold on to control by keeping you out of the information and you're relying only on them for the information, then you take away the control if you start, you know, log into that My Chart or whatever.
Yep. And what I would also say about that is if you've got a problem with the school that they're going to, I want you to understand a couple of things. Number one, why do you have that objection? Is it because of location? Is it because of the quality of the school? And to really understand what you may be opposed to, and then understand that the fight is going to have an effect on the child, and that may or may not be the battle you want to choose. Okay?
Hey, Brooke, we have had several questions about if somebody would want to rewatch this presentation, if that's an availability.
I think at some point we're going to make this available. I don't know exactly how that's going to unfold, but I'll get with the team when we're done, and we'll send out an email if and when that's going to be available. I think that on some level we're going to make that, and that takes us, I think, out of this Q&A and into the next piece. Very shortly here, we are going to launch our membership site, the Disengagement Zone. And this is going to be a place where you guys can get a lot of this information as a member of the site. we're going to have these master classes that'll be available to you, special offers on our courses, referrals, exclusive episodes of our podcasts, and daily emails that are going to be available as well. So our daily emails, they're just going to be this place where you get some reminders, strategies, tips, insights that are just going to keep you in the mindset that we're trying to keep you in here. We're going to have some live Q&As that are going on that are going to be available to the members only in this process. So we're going to be able to come in and we're going to be able to have some of these discussions that are rich and full. So you get the experience of those of us that are presenting this for you. Master classes just like this, they'll be available to you as a member. These are not going to happen on a broad level going forward. These are going to be pieces that are available to you because you're a member of this piece. Special offers on our courses. You will get a discount on all these courses that we are constantly putting out on parallel parenting, on the nuances about dealing with conflict and some of the other stuff that we have developed and we are continuing to develop. So that's it. This will be launching really shortly. You'll be getting emails for this membership site. We'll be cracking the door open a little bit so you can see what's here. We're going to be able to have some of the professionals that we deal with as referrals for you, for parenting, for mediation, for some of the other pieces. There'll be a resource center here and a reference center for you as well. That's our masterclass for today, guys. Thank you for showing up. I'm going to step back here for a quick second and ask my team if Michelle and I missed anything here. Are we good? The other thing that I want to ask from everybody that's in here is you guys keep showing up here. I see a lot of the names that keep showing up. I see new people coming in here. Give us some feedback. If you like what we're doing, give us some feedback, engage with us. And I'll say one more thing here that I think is really important. You guys are looking all over the place for help. There's good help out there, and there's not so good help out there. And where you've got experience in this room, we've been at this for a long, long time. You don't hear me talking about narcissism. You don't hear me talking about narcissistic abuse. You don't hear me talking about alienation. All of these are in this package of what you're dealing with. I understand that. But blowing around and talking about it doesn't get it done. Understanding and working with us in a way that you have the ability to solve a problem doesn't come out of, again, Instagram or Facebook or watching a YouTube video of somebody going blah, blah, blah. It comes out of you doing the work. It comes out of you engaging and digging in and understanding what is needed, because this is all about your kids. You got this handled. You're big boys and girls. You can do this, but you need also some stability in your world and an understanding that this is something that you can do and there are pathways to this. So that's what this membership site's about. That's about what this engagement's about. So when you get that email, open it up. We'll give you a little peek behind the scenes and find a way to engage with us. We're here. This is what we do. This is all that we do. And this is all that we've done for the last 2+ decades. So thanks again, guys, for showing up. Keep engaging with us. We'll keep engaging with you. Bye now.